spiritual partners know they have souls. And spiritual partners stay together as long as they're growing spiritually together. And when they don't, they begin to lose interest in one another. And if they don't stop growing spiritually, they don't lose interest in one another. What brings spiritual partners together is their souls, their recognition in one another of a person or people who long for substance and depth in their relationships, who long for awareness in themselves and intend to make it. In that sense, energy attracts like energy. But if you're not conscious, aware of your own internal dynamics, then the law of attraction brings you to that which you are not conscious of in yourself, and that's limiting. You were not born now to be limited. We are realizing that we are creators, that we create our experiences of the world, not the other way around. That what lies behind our eyes is more powerful than what lies before them. Welcome back. It's such a joy to be with you. Thank you. I consider this podcast our home. And I love experimenting in it and seeing what's going to come out of it. My intention is always to share with you with integrity all that I can. And, maybe even more important, always more important, with love, with care, with concern. All of this is the product of creating authentic power. And I'm not saying that I'm authentically powerful all the time, but I do a better job of it now than I have in the past. And I enjoy my life a lot more, too. We've just created an interesting podcast, beautiful podcast on the law of attraction. And I want to explore what the law of attraction means in terms of spiritual partnership. We are in the midst of a epic, unprecedented transformation in human consciousness. And I repeat that so many times because it's always true, and it's going to be true for the next several generations. And that epic transformation, the new consciousness that is entering into you, or you are entering into it, is affecting everything that you experience, everything that you can contribute. It's bringing more consciousness to you and to the world that you create. The old consciousness was limited to the five senses, to what we could see and hear and touch and see and smell. And we understood that world through the intellect. That world and the intellect were born together. They were designed to go together. The intellect gathers data that the five senses provided. And it looks at that data and it analyzes them. And it compares them. And then it comes to conclusions. And the conclusions are what the personality can use to pursue external power. External power, manipulation and control, and the pursuit of it now produce only violence and destruction. That's how obsolete the intellect is. Yes, it can still study astrophysics. Yes, it can still study subatomic particles. Yes, it can still use all of what it studies to affect the physical world. The use of electromagnetic radiation, not to speak of the discovery of it, enables you to be listening to this podcast and enables me to present it. But there's more to it, a lot more to it. And what is it? It is now everything. You, your experience, the world. All of this is changing. The new consciousness is a gift. It's being given to you. You don't have to create it, although you will probably find ways to enhance it. But the new understanding of power, authentic power, the alignment of the personality with the soul, the ability to recognize the difference between love and fear in yourself and choose love no matter what is happening on the inside of you or what is happening outside of you, all of that. The creation of authentic power is a potential. A potential, it's not a gift. The potential itself is the gift, but you must bring the potential into being in your own life, and that is the creation of authentic power. And this podcast will explore different ways of doing that. Really, there's only one way of creating authentic power. It's simple. Here it is. Develop emotional awareness, make responsible choices, and consult intuition. But now we'll go into, and we do go into, each of those. What do they mean? How can you use them? They're not difficult. Creating authentic power is difficult because changing your life from the ground up is not easy. And you discover how difficult it is to what we're calling the frightened parts of your personality, the parts that don't want to change, the parts that will not change, but that doesn't mean that you will not change. That is what you can choose. In other words, you can't choose what you're going to experience next emotionally, but you can choose what you're going to do once you experience it. So everything that you once understood and that I once understood before, or at least I, because I have had the old consciousness, millennials and Gen Z don't have it. You are among the first of the generations to be born with the new consciousness from youth. But everyone is acquiring the new consciousness over the next generation and a half, which means there's still quite a few people that have the old consciousness, about half of us. But those of us that have the new consciousness can delight in it, can use it, can recognize it for what it is. Freedom from the confines of the five senses. Freedom from the limitation of the intellect. Because both of those are no longer our pathway to evolving. We are transforming from a five-sensory species that evolves by surviving and then survives by pursuing external power, by manipulating and controlling. And we're changing into, as I speak and as you listen, a multisensory species that evolves by growing spiritually and grows spiritually by creating authentic power, the alignment of the personality with the soul, harmony, cooperation, sharing, and reverence for life. These are the intentions of the soul. These are the things that we are now becoming aware we have a thirst for. And satisfying that thirst will bring us joy. Satisfying the wants and the needs of frightened parts of our personality will bring us only more contraction, pain, suffering, and fear. So now we come back to something like the law of attraction, which is energy attracts like energy. It's simple and you can see it everywhere. If you're a brutal person, you'll attract brutality. If you're a loving person, you'll attract love. And as you begin to see this dynamic in action, you can ask yourself, well, do I like attracting brutality? If you're as unaware as I was, yes, I did. But I wasn't as brutal as some people I attracted. And that was a problem for me. But it's never a problem for me to attract more people that are loving than I am, because we're all on the same course as we enter the new consciousness. We see all of our experiences as the experiences of personalities in a learning environment. And that learning environment is the Earth School, a domain of time and space and matter and fear. Love is our curriculum. Authentic power is love. There's no power greater than that. Our classes vary. Some of us learn from feeling superior and others from feeling inferior. Some of us learn from being intellectuals, and some of us learn from creating beautiful art with our hands. Some of us use our minds to create mathematics, and some of us use our hands to build sculptures and houses. These are all different classes, but they all are teaching the same thing: how to use our aptitudes and interests, how to use our volition, our free will, to create and showing us in the process of learning what we create when we create with love and what we create when we create with fear. These are very different creations. Creating with fear is something that happens unconsciously all the time if you're not aware. In other words, fear is that dynamic that perpetuates itself continually, unconsciously. And creating authentic power is replacing that dynamic with a dynamic that perpetuates itself consciously. In other words, you don't have to intend to create with fear. If you're angry, and the way I experienced it as anger, I would shout, I would become enraged. If you're jealous, you don't have to think, I'm going to become jealous now, here I go. No, it doesn't work like that. You become jealous when a frightened part of your personality that's jealous becomes active. But loving, oh, that's a different thing. You've got to intend it. You've got to choose it consciously. Creating authentic power is not something that you just happen into. Creating authentic power is love, but not love that you stumble onto or fall into or discover or is given to you. It's love that is chosen by you, by no one else. Decision by decision, choice by choice, you create authentic power. Now, what does this have to do with the law of attraction and spiritual partners? A lot, and in ways that you cannot see with only five sensory perception. With only five sensory perception, it's evident that smile in the world smiles with you. If you're angry, you live in an angry world. If you're loving, you live in a loving world. But why? And the depth of that is becoming visible to us through our multisensory perception, through the new consciousness. When you see two people in dispute, in conflict, you do not know what's coming to conclusion in that moment of interaction where one person is controlled by anger. Maybe both are. All you see is a snapshot that takes less than a nanosecond, but it can reflect dynamics that have evolved as we experience them over centuries. That's why you cannot judge. Let me put it this way, you can judge, but when you judge what you feel to be is unfair, you create painful karma for yourself, painful consequences for yourself because you do not know enough. If you become angry with someone who's angry, you yourself enter the darkness. Evil, anger, all of the frightened parts of our personalities are not presence. They are absences. They are the absence of light, the absence of love. What can you do with an absence? Lock it up? Sentence it for a lifetime? Take away its smartphone? Go to war with it with an army? None of that has any effect on an absence, like evil, like fear. It's an illusion. The only thing that can change an absence is a presence. So if you become angry, if you become judgmental as those who judge you, you yourself enter the darkness. You yourself experience the same. If you have no compassion for people who have no compassion, what's the difference? None. But you can make a difference, and the new consciousness allows us to make the difference. Even many people in the old consciousness are compassionate. They would not harm anything, but they're not authentically powerful. They are harmless often because they have been hurt. They have experienced pain so much themselves, they would not hurt anything. But the harmlessness that comes with authentic power is very different. Authentic power is becoming so powerful that the idea of showing power through harm or force is not even a part of your consciousness. So now let's come back to spiritual partnership And the law of attraction, as I started out at the beginning of this discussion, here's the beginning. Spiritual partners know they have souls. And spiritual partners know that there is a reason for their being together. And that reason has to do with their souls. This is not something that the five senses can reveal to you or that the intellect can confirm. It thinks it can understand, but it cannot grasp the reality of it. As you become multisensory, you begin to realize that you are the reality of it. The reality is much larger than the reality in the earth school, and that is the reality that always has been moving you and affecting what you experience. The difference is now we are becoming aware of it so that we can use our larger awareness in a constructive way. And what does that mean? It means to learn love. It means to learn how to live a life of meaning and purpose and joy. It means to be able to move through your five sensory experiences, all of your experiences, in fact, with an empowered heart without attachment to the outcome. Spiritual partners may be experiencing an attraction that is centuries old. It may be one of animosity and conflict, or it may be one of attraction and love. And if they're unconscious, they live those things out. They're attracted to each other unconsciously. You might call it romantic love. That's what a lot of people do, but that doesn't lead very far before you begin to become aware that the person you're with romantically is more than a projection of what you want them to be. You begin to see that this person you're with, has a temper. Or this person has a drinking problem. Who would have guessed that? Or this person is only thinking about herself. Well, in other words, this other person has frightened parts of her personality. This other person has frightened parts of his personality. And you begin to see them, and they begin to see them in you. And that is the end of the honeymoon. That is the end of the fantasy. And that's when a breakup usually occurs. And it can be after the honeymoon is over, literally, or it can be after 40 years of realizing there's other things that you want to do, other places to go internally, other vistas to explore than the frightened parts of your personality and someone else's. And that's when a spiritual partnership falls apart. It disintegrates. Spiritual partners stay together as long as they're growing spiritually together. And when they don't, they begin to lose interest in one another. And if they don't stop growing spiritually, they don't lose interest in one another. It's this larger reality, this larger context, this larger arena that supersedes all that we could imagine and experience in the domain of the five senses. That's the domain of physics. That's the domain of biology. That's the domain of the five senses. That's the domain of the external world seen as the determiner of our experiences now. We are realizing that we are creators, that we create our experiences of the world, not the other way around. That what lies behind our eyes is more powerful than what lies before them. Sometimes spiritual partners seem as though they're opposites because one is intellectual and the other is artistic. Maybe because one of them is more gregarious and the other is more introspective. This happens sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. What brings spiritual partners together is their souls, their recognition in one another of a person or people who intend, who long for substance and depth in their relationships, who long for awareness in themselves and intend to make it. In that sense, energy attracts energy. That's the very best sense possible. But if you're not conscious, aware of your own internal dynamics, then the law of attraction brings you to that which you are not conscious of in yourself, and that's limiting. You were not born now to be limited. You are in a new terrain. You are encountering or going to encounter soon new capabilities that might surprise you. And you can explore those new capabilities with those who are also interested in the same thing. And many of those, all of those are your potential spiritual partners. And those you choose and those who choose you, together you form a spiritual partnership, a partnership between equals for the purpose of spiritual growth. But your spiritual growth is not confined to a spiritual partnership. It is not confined by anything. The world gives you in every interaction and every experience an opportunity to create authentic power. If you're enjoying anything you're hearing on this podcast, subscribe to it. Now, what do I mean by enjoy? Do I mean, is it entertaining for you? Does it make you laugh? Does it make you forget your worries? That's not what I mean. I mean, do you resonate with anything that I say as relevant, profound, and pertinent for you, not for the world, for you? Something that you can use, something that you can experiment with in your life. If you do, if you resonate, then subscribe, because there's more where this comes from. It comes from the universe, as do you. Here's a soul step. Write down in your journal that you're carrying in your jean pocket or in your purse or somewhere on you, close by you, write down what you resonated most with in this episode, because we've talked about a lot of things, mostly, all, in fact, entirely love, but different ways of expressing it, exploring it, looking at it, feeling it, and experiencing the awareness of it. You cannot create love. That's meaningless. The universe is love. If you love someone that you didn't love before, you haven't created more love in the world. You've changed your awareness. You've expanded it to include more of what the universe is. And creating authentic power is a first step, and a big one, a very big one, toward experiencing that love everywhere, because that love is the universe, and you are that. I'm looking forward to what you will see when you look at the journal that you will write in, and what this soul step has brought into your awareness that might not have been there before. I'm looking forward to being with you again. I'm Gary Zukav.